That was horrible. What's happening, my fellow geeks and geekettes? Welcome to a brand new episode of Cosplay Chris, and this marks the first episode for 2020. Well, technically here 2020. I know there are still some places around the world that are yet to enter the new year, but for technicality purposes, this is the first Cosplay Chris episode of 2020, and we are starting with a bang. We are going to be doing a review of Season 1 of The Mandalorian. Now, just some housekeeping rules, word of warning, there will be some spoilers in this video because I just simply cannot talk about this series without heading into spoiler territory. So you guys have been warned. If you have not seen the entire season, I highly suggest you go watch the entire thing. Come back here and check it out. So The Mandalorian is on Disney Plus. It was developed by Jon Favreau, who is a fan of Star Wars and the Star Wars mythology, which means you are in good hands in that case. If you have fans that are writing, directing, producing, creating series and films, then you know it's usually going to be bang on in terms of fan service and just paying homage to the mythology of characters and worlds and all that jazz. And The Mandalorian is an 8-episode series. This is Season 1. They have just wrapped filming Season 2, which will be coming out later this year, which is amazing and I'm very excited about. And it follows the Mandalorian, or just simply known as Mando. He is played brilliantly by the beyond charming Pedro Pascal. He's just, his voice, his mannerisms, it's perfect. And the fact that he has to act under that armor, under that helmet, is kind of like Tom Hardy's Bane. Tom obviously had to emote through his eyes. Pedro, he has nothing. He has to rely on his movements, his mannerisms, and it's brilliantly done and executed by this actor, as well as his double. I forget his double's name, but he's actually the grandson of John Wayne. So there obviously are some times where you can tell there's a bit of a shift in terms of the body language, especially with his walk, and you know, he has that kind of gunslinger hustle to him, and it does change sometimes, and you can tell that there's the double, or you know, it's Pascal. So either way, I don't mind. It worked. It worked really well. So this synopsis actually comes from Jon Favreau. So after the stories of Jango and Boba Fett, another warrior emerges in the Star Wars universe. The Mandalorian is set after the fall of the Empire and before the emergence of the First Order. The series depicts a lone bounty hunter in the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from the authority of the New Republic. So in the first episode, we are introduced to a bunch of characters, including Carl Weathers' character, and it's amazing to see Carl Weathers on screen again. The guy is just terrific and just oozes this cool, calm nature whenever he is on screen. So the Mandalorian is given the task by Carl Weathers' character to acquire a asset, a living asset that is quote unquote, the asset is 50 years old. And this asset happens to be, as the internet has named him, Baby Yoda. So Mando is essentially required to take this thing in, and they're either going to execute it or use it for genetic purposes, study it, just some sort of evil scheme. Something is going down, and Mando has a bad feeling about it, and he grows quite attached to Baby Yoda, and so much so he ends up taking him, and he's sort of on the run. He's out of the creed. After that, he's excommunicado, essentially. So it's like Star Wars meets John Wick. He's on the run. And so from then on out, it's just a bunch of just amazing adventures. It's very Western-like, and this series has restored my faith in Star Wars since Disney acquired the rights to it. So, and don't get me wrong, you know, the Disney movies that have come out since Disney acquired them and started making them, and The Force Awakens and all that, they have been fun, but they haven't been like the original trilogy, and to a lesser extent the prequels. The original 6 just had this charm about them, and then you can tell that it's a Disney production. But with The Mandalorian, it goes back to basics. I don't know if you guys saw my Rise of Skywalker review. My biggest complaint is there was just too much going on in Rise of Skywalker. Every frame, there was just a lot going on, but not just visually, but story-wise. You have to keep it simple, stupid. And in The Mandalorian, they do that. They go back to the old school ways of the original trilogy. Just simple characters, simple storyline, and it works. The series does definitely take inspiration from spaghetti westerns and the old adventure serials, which what George Lucas based the original trilogy on. The general consensus is there's always going to be a filler episode in a series. Case in point, in Stranger Things, I think it was the second last episode of season 1 where Eleven goes off with this new crew who have special powers like her, and the rest of the crew weren't featured in it. The original boys weren't featured in it, and it didn't feel right. It didn't sit right. There was no character development. Nothing moved forward. And case in point is episode 6 in The Mandalorian, and that is entitled The Prisoner. So this episode actually features Bill Burr. Bill Burr has a very prominent role in this episode. The guy can act. The guy is great at comedy, and the guy can act. I really enjoyed his character in this episode, but much like that second last episode of Stranger Things, nothing happened. Nothing was moving forward. Characters weren't moving forward, and it was just some of the oddest acting and just cringeworthy acting I've ever seen from particular characters, and it's no disrespect to them. They were obviously working with what they were given, and it was just hamming it up way too much, and it just didn't feel cohesive with the rest of the episodes. Fun fact, Chapter 4, called Sanctuary, was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. She said she was looking forward to working with Pedro Pascal, and she did not meet him once throughout production of that episode. It was all done by his double, because Pedro was off apparently rehearsing for King Lear on Broadway. So I think his name is Brian Wayne. This is the guy that's Bruce Wayne, not Bruce Wayne. This is the guy that is John Wayne's grandson, and he doubled for Pedro Pascal in The Mandalorian. And he did the whole thing, because Mr. Pascal was off rehearsing for King Lear, and he came into the ADR booth and did all the dialogue, and that was pretty much it. But yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard said that she did not meet him at all. So we got the filler episode out of the way. Let's talk about the costumes and the special effects. This is where this series really shines. Apart from the story, the costumes are beautiful. It's the Mandalorian's costume is beautiful, and you see him upgraded throughout the episodes, and it's quite cool the way they do it. And you see bits of the Creed, the Mandalorian Creed, and different Mandalorian outfits, attires, armors, and how their armor is made. And I love all that. And I honestly cannot wait to see the cosplays this year, in terms of not just Mando and Baby Yoda and all that, but all the other Mandalorians that you see in the series. There is a lot of practical effects and a lot of practical sets. I've seen some behind the scenes docos, stuff like that, and there is a minimal blue screen. And Favreau is all for practical, which is brilliant. It just makes me happy. It's the Christopher Nolan approach, minimal CGI and a shitload of practical. That's just how it works. That's just how it should work. CGI and practical have to complement each other and work together. And case in point, this series, especially when you see shots of Mando's ship, or other ships for that matter, taking off or landing, and it's that beautiful shot where a ship comes in and you see the feet. That was horrible. But you get what I mean. And it just looks brilliant. You see all the detail and oil stains coming out of these ships. And for a TV series budget, even though it's a Disney budget, which is like $1 bajillion, it looks fantastic. Now, I'm not going to attempt the name of the person who did the wonderfully executed score and soundtrack, because I don't want to disrespect them or butcher their name. But it's so different. It is so not Star Wars. And at the beginning of each episode, when the title, The Mandalorian, pops up, that part of the score I love. I keep playing that over and over on YouTube on my laptop and blasting it out when I'm in the workshop and stuff like that. So it is very different and steers quite far away from what we know a Star Wars soundtrack to sound like, which is great, because this series wants to differ itself from everyone else, even though it is canon. In the events after Return of the Jedi and stuff like that, it definitely wants to stand on its own, and quite frankly, it does. Now, again, this is a major spoiler. My favorite episode is the last episode, episode 8, and the episode is entitled Redemption. So 2 things happen at the end of this episode. 1, we see Pedro Pascal's beautiful mug under that helmet for about 10 seconds. This happens when he is severely wounded. He is mortally wounded, and we have IG-11, who is voiced by Taika Waititi, and Taika Waititi directed this episode. He's trying to save Mando. Everyone else has bailed, and Mando is left in this burning hut, and IG-11 said, I have to take your helmet off to help you, because he suffered some trauma in the back of his head and he's bleeding out. So he takes the Mando's helmet off, and we see him for about 10 seconds. IG-11 sprays some cauterizing stuff on his head, and I thought that was a bold move. It's ballsy. They could have gone the whole series without seeing his face, but I just think that 10 seconds of just seeing this humanity under the helmet, because he is very quietly spoken. He's cool, calm, collected, man of few words, and we just want to see that little bit of humanity under there to make us appreciate the character even more. We appreciated him already as is with the helmet on, but just to see a face under there. And as soon as he comes back and joins the other characters with IG-11, he has popped the helmet straight back on, because that's the Mandalorian way. This is the way. And right at the end, we have the character Gideon, who shows up in the episode before. So Mando actually ends up getting a jetpack, which is amazing. So at the end, Gideon attacks in a TIE fighter, and the Mando uses the jetpack to bring the craft down, but Moff survives. So Mando leaves with Baby Yoda. And obviously we are going to see these other characters again in Season 2. We have to, because they're amazing. And then we see Gideon cutting himself out of the TIE fighter with a dark saber. Gorgeous. So there is a lot to talk about in terms of that. And that's where it's going to be that open discussion in the comments section and what we're going to see from that in Season 2. Now, before I wrap everything up, I just want to say that I am in love with Gina Carano as Cara Dune. She was badass in it, man. It wasn't one of those things where they've just thrown her in there for the sake of throwing her in here. Like, this woman really had to have her acting chops cut out for her with this series, because she really had to hit some high notes, some low notes in terms of acting beats. And her character is very badass and just in a very organic way, not forced. And I really want to see more of her. She's an amazing actress, and I really hope to see a lot more of her in Season 2. Her and the Mando complement each other perfectly, like really, really well. It's the chemistry is right. She's a woman of a lot of words, and Mando is a man of few words, but it works, you know. She gets shit done, man. So guys, overall, Mandalorian Season 1 is an absolute blast. Duh. So Mum and I actually watched it. We sat down one day and binge watched the first 4 episodes when it was only up to episode 4, and we were hooked. And it's good. These half-an-hour little bursts just keep you wanting more and more, especially when it leaves you on a cliffhanger at the end of certain episodes. It works perfectly. I understand that hour-long episodes need to happen and work, but in this case, half-an-hour bursts of The Mandalorian are perfect. It's the perfect format for this type of thing. Despite the lackluster episode 6, you have to expect a filler episode here and there with any TV series. There's always going to be that downer of an episode where just nothing really makes sense or nothing really moves the characters forward. I couldn't care less. You have to expect that. So with that being said, I'm going to be giving The Mandalorian 5 geeks out of 5. Cannot wait to see Season 2. Cannot wait to do a Mandalorian cosplay. And I'll be talking about that in a separate video, and building a baby Yoda. So 2020 is going to be a very busy year for us cosplayers in terms of the Mandalorian universe. Guys, again, a massive Happy New Year's to each and every one of you. If this video comes out before the clock has struck midnight wherever you are in the world, please be safe out there. If you are partying on, party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. 2020 is going to be a big year. Got some really fun cosplay ideas coming up. I really want to smash out some more videos. I want to do a lot more skits. So you guys remember the Batsuit video, putting on a Batsuit, expectation versus reality. I want to do a lot more of them because they're just fun to do, and it just breaks things up from doing videos like this. Not that there's anything wrong with these, but you just got to keep it fresh. Just keep you guys guessing. So guys, when you have checked out The Mandalorian, please drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Is this series what you've wanted to see? Has it kind of restored your faith in the whole Disney Star Wars thing? Do you want to see a lot more of this? Do you want to see multiple seasons, not just 2 seasons? Do you want to see this go on to, say, Season 5? Guys, wherever you are in the world, have yourselves a cracker of a day. I hope you're well, hope you're happy, be merry, be silly, and until next time, geeks, please always remember, cosplayers do it best.